So tonight's forum is a timely conversation that focuses on the Olympic journey of 3 inspiring local Olympians. What we would like you as the audience to get out of this forum is a deeper appreciation for our Olympians and to better understand what it takes to become an Olympian and compete on an Olympic stage, to understand the trials and the tribulations of what these athletes endure just to get on that Olympic stage, to hear their experiences through their stories and in the interactions that they will have with one another on the panel. And finally, we want to create a little bit of excitement as we head into the Winter Olympics later this week. We're fortunate enough to have Kevin Evans return as our moderator for tonight's event. Kevin went from broadcast journalist to association executive to CEO to semi-retirement. The common element of Kevin Evans' career has been communication and specifically facilitating community conversations. I want to talk a little bit about tonight's format. For those of you who are frequent visitors to our forum, we're going to switch it up a little bit tonight. With the dynamic nature of these 3 panelists and their shared experience, we want to foster a more interactive conversation between the panelists where they can build on their shared experiences through stories rather than separate and distinct presentations. Audience, you can select gallery or speaker view. And if you go to your upper right corner of your screen, you will see a grid that says view. And if you click on that, you can choose select gallery or speaker view so that you can see all of the panelists or just the one that's speaking. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our 3 panelists. Madison Maley is an Olympic champion. Madison, maybe you could turn your camera on, in the sport of rowing from the Tokyo 2010 Games. She is now working in financial management for the Maley Rogers Group here in West Vancouver. Hey, Madison. Maxwell Latimer, a 2-time Olympian and Pan Am Games gold medalist in the lightweight men's 4 in rowing. Maxwell also serves as a member of the Canadian Olympic Committee Athletes Commission. Hey, Max. Kate O'Brien. She is a 2016 Olympian, Pan Am Games gold medalist, para world champion, and Tokyo Paralympic silver medalist in track cycling. I'm going to shortly turn this over to them for a bit more of a fulsome introduction of themselves and ask them to include a little bit about what they would like the audience to get out of this evening's presentation and dialogue. And I'm going to hand it over to Kevin to take us through this evening's event. And I will ask Kevin to explain the format for this evening, and I'll catch up with you later. Kevin?
Here I am. Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone, and great to see our Olympians. I love your outfits tonight. I'm sorry I don't have one, but you know I'm not an Olympian, so that explains that. Our format this evening, well, we're going to, as Joanne said, we're going to hear from Madison, Kate, and Maxwell, perhaps not in that order. I think they know what the order is, to elaborate a little bit more about their journey, to give you a bit of an introduction, and also to give you a sense of what success is going to look like tonight, what they would like you to get out of this evening, and what a great opportunity this is. The opening games are Friday morning at 3:30 a.m. They start our time. I know I'll be up. And so we're really starting to hopefully focus in and regain some of that excitement that we felt here in Vancouver in 2010. And we'll be hearing a little bit later, I think, about how 2010 inspired some of these athletes that are with us on this program this evening. And then after a little bit of a conversation, we'll open it up to your questions, and we'll invite you to do that using the Q&A function. So all that coming tonight in the next hour and a half or thereabouts. So who wants to start this evening? Madison, it looks like you've got yourself off on mute, so off you go.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here tonight and to speak to everyone with Maxwell and Kate. Maxwell and Kate are both incredible athletes, and I hope that we can shed a little bit of light onto why we are successful and show that there are many different pathways to get there. I feel very lucky to have grown up here in West Vancouver and to be supporting Enhance West Van tonight. I thought I'd start with just providing a bit of background on myself. So I went to Collingwood School up in the British Properties, and I went to that school from kindergarten to grade 12. So I was a lifer, and I took my first rowing strokes when I was 12 years old at Deep Cove Rowing Club. Before rowing, I went and did every sport under the sun, but I really loved dancing and singing. And I danced at Anna Wyman's studio, and some of my favorite memories as a child were spent there. In grade 8, my parents wanted me to choose a sport, and I wanted to play volleyball, but they suggested doing something outside and something that was fun. And I think something that our family was already doing, which was the sport of rowing. So I thought, why not give it a try? I did instantly fall in love with the sport, the friends I made, and the community that rowing did create. I ended up getting recruited to schools across America, and I went to Northeastern University on a full scholarship. I had an incredible 5 years in Boston, and I achieved my BSBA, and I sang opera to get my certificate merit in performance studies from the New England Conservatory. My Olympic dream started when I was a little bit older than most. I first wanted to compete on the big stage after competing at the under 23 championships in 2017. I think the dream felt a little bit too big before then. And once I had worn the maple leaf at that regatta, I thought I could do this if I just put in the work. I would love to now share my screen if it works properly and bring you back to July 30th. Thousands of hours went into training for this moment, and I couldn't have imagined standing on the podium with anyone other than the 8 women that stood there with me. So if this works, here's a 3-minute clip of a dream come true for me.
There's the Canadians, gold in 92, silver in 2012 and 96, and bronze in Sydney. They're coxed by Kristen Kitt, a 32-year-old.
Power, 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 16 legs together, blades digging deep, and then getting more linear, quick and clean, quick and clean. Everyone is off the line. They are putting it on the line.
Good start for the Canadians in lane 2. It's the Canadians with a very slight lead early in this women's 8.
Each of these athletes will be seeing stars. They'll be seeing blackness. They do not have to think about steering the boat. They just have to listen to what the coxswain says and drive their body and their brain into the depths of the pain cave.
We've got 500 to go in the women's 8 final. And the Kiwis have picked it up a bit, and they are challenging the Canadians now for that lead.
It's all about grit right now. It's all about pushing, and it looks like the Canadians are pushing. They're pushing to the line. They're putting it all out there. Or is it going to be theirs? Is it going to be the Canadians? Are they going to hold on?
They haven't won gold since 92. They're in the gold medal position right now. Canada on top of New Zealand. The Chinese in third, battling with the Aussies at the top of your picture. But keep your eye on the red and white of Canada. They have about a boat-length lead on the Kiwis. They are in the final meters of this women's 8. Canada rowing for gold.
Sit up tall, push your legs down, nothing else matters.
Gold for Canada, silver for the Kiwis, and bronze for China. Canada win gold, their first since 92. Kristen Kitt on her feet, celebrating with Avalon Westonese. It is a pure gold race for the Canadians.
And here are the Canadians, exhausted and thrilled. Kirsten Kitt, obviously excited from the coxswain seat, losing her cox box into the water. I hope she'll be able to pick that one up. I'm sure Nielsen Kellerman will happily give her a new one.
Well, whatever Kristen did, she called the perfect race. Canadians led from the start, and they finished in front at the end.
So if you take a second to remember some of the best moments in your life, they do likely involve celebrating with people you care about and have connections with. Over my 12 years of rowing, I have had lots of these special moments. These 8 other women in my boat are some of my best friends, and we worked really hard on and off the water to create a culture that provided psychological security and space to be individuals. My team had some big personalities. Some people were loud, some people were blunt, some people were quiet, and we had to find a way to bring out the best in each person. I felt confident that every weakness was covered by another person's strength. We were 100% stronger together, and I trusted in our differences, which is a very hard thing to do. My favorite quote, I think because I sang in choral music, was, if we were all singing the same note, there would be no harmony. And I think from watching that video, hopefully you can see that our boat had some harmony. Along with that, our team had to go through a lot of changes over the last 4 years, which I hope we can shed some light on tonight. We had a coaching change in the Olympic year. We went through 2 rounds of Olympic selection. There was a global pandemic, which led to an Olympic postponement, and it felt like we were tripping at the finish line. We trained virtually for 4 months, and when we finally got back together, there were so many injuries. Quickly, one I want to touch on is this defining moment. We were coming up to the 2021 games. We had just done some internal racing and we were going fast. The boat was flying. It felt so good. But 40 days out from the Olympics, a bunch of us were on a big team ride and the unthinkable happened. I was drafting closely behind Avalon when suddenly I saw in front of us, Kasia, my teammate, start to lose control on her bike. She swerved slightly. I saw her try to save it, but it's too late. Bam, she hit the ground. I swerve and avoid crashing into my 3 other teammates, but I saw Kasia on the ground and Lisa and Avalon go flying over her. Throwing my bike to the ground, I ran back to my teammates and saw them sprawled across the concrete. It was absolute carnage. Bikes were all over the road, blood was all over the ground, and the sound of Kasia's screams filled the air. As you can imagine, it was pretty horrific. It was a moment where you feel your dream crumbling. But 3 of my teammates ended up walking away from that accident, or rather driving away from the accident. Bruises, road rash, a concussion for Avalon and Lisa, and a broken collarbone for Kasia with 56 stitches all over her body. Not exactly how I was expecting our pre-Olympic training camp to go, but I wanted to tell that story to remind you that when things feel unfixable, they aren't. When things feel unattainable, they aren't. And when you feel alone, you are not. This community is pretty incredible, and each and every one of us have people who love us and want to listen and support us. I didn't let myself believe in me for a long time. And I want you to ask yourself, why not? Why can't that be you? If you want to go to the Olympics, or if you want to be the best singer, or if you want to be the smartest person in your class, you got to believe in yourself. So I'm excited for tonight. I really hope that you'll enjoy hearing from Max, Kate, and myself, because we're just human like all of you, and we have just a little different of a story.
I'll say. Madison, thank you so very, very much. Boy, very evocative, and you created such wonderful images. And what was so wonderful was watching your face as you watched the replay of that race. I don't know, it must have been the 100th time or more, and yet it seemed as though it was the first time, and you could tell that you were there again. And I gotta tell you, I watched it live, and I watched it again, and it just was giving me shivers down my back, just seeing it again. So,
thank you. Yeah, it's
definitely
6 minutes I'll never forget.
I'll bet. Just a reminder to folks watching at home that as you're listening to our Olympians and Paralympians talking tonight, that if you have some questions that occur to you while they're chatting, you can use the Q&A button, which is on the lower part of your screen in the middle, and write your questions, and we'll be getting to those a little bit later in our program tonight. So, from Madison to Maxwell, over to you.
I am the unlucky one who has to follow up that performance because Kevin, you may point out Madison's face while she was watching that. I was standing in the village with the entire rest of Team Canada, the rowing team. We all were watching around our little TV that we had in our residence rooms in the village. And I was immediately transported back to that feeling that we had of just like all of us singing "Oh Canada" to a screen that had no audio. Like, it was just an incredible experience, and what a great memory for myself as a teammate, and for Madison to share that again. So rowing, now you've had a bit of an introduction, I'm going to kind of piggyback off Madison's story and try and add a little bit more of a different perspective, because even though we were part of the same sport, we have two very different journeys in sport. And so I grew up in Vancouver. I'm one of 5 sons. And so I got into the sport in a very similar way to Madison, in that I'm the middle child. So I'm 3 and 5. And often that's actually how I get called. I get called number 3. I don't even get my name used. And so as we did in our family, you follow the leader. And brother number 1 went to Vancouver College and he started rowing. Brother number 2 did the same. And of course, I saw them enjoy themselves and I thought, why not? I would love to try this. I found out actually when I was going to the Olympics in Rio, my coach from that grade 8 year of me trying out for the team told me that I was the last person to make the 12-man roster for the grade 8 rowing team at Vancouver College. And it's funny that it took him almost 10 years for him to tell me that, because I never really realized I was that close to getting cut. And I imagine what would have been if I didn't do rowing that year, maybe try and found a different sport to pursue my passion. But I fell in love with rowing immediately, not necessarily because I was the best, but because I loved pushing myself. I loved pursuing something that I could get better at with my own metrics. And then most importantly, I loved the community. It's an incredible environment to be around. The best friends that I made in grade 8 in rowing are still my best friends to this day. And it was a testament to us going through university or through high school together. And actually a bunch of us ended up rowing in university together, and even actually on the national team, which I think is pretty incredible to have a little high school from Vancouver graduate multiple national team athletes. So my journey, I made my first senior national team when I was 19 years old. And as a 19-year-old, you're thrown into the garden of the beasts. Everyone else in my team was between the ages of 27 to 32. And what I learned in that situation was I had to open up my eyes and take in as much feedback as possible, because throughout all my experiences with teammates, there are certain strengths and certain weaknesses in people, but everybody has great feedback that you can take in. And so learning to work with your teammates and to appreciate their strengths, appreciate their weaknesses, and try to work together to produce a common result was something I really enjoyed doing. And I feel very lucky for the teammates that I had in that quadrennial leading towards the Rio Olympics. I have one incredible memory that was it's something very special for the 4 athletes that I competed with at the games in in the games in Rio, that I want to share a little video from the Pan Am Games in 2015.
Great clip from the Pan Am Games yesterday. It just made me happy. Canada won gold in the men's lightweight coxless 4. Mm-hmm. And we ran a clip from Eric Wolfel, who was part of the crew, and they were in St. Catharines, Ontario, and they just won it. This by far wins the gold medal for happiest person post gold medal for the Pan Am Games in Canada. Enjoy.
I had incredible support from the three guys behind me, and this is a team effort. And without such great guys behind me, this kind of a result wouldn't be possible, especially with all the help we get from our coaching staff at Rowing Canada. And most importantly, the city of St. Catharines. The city of St. Catharines was huge. I could hear them when I was coming through that bottom 500 meters, and I was so hungry. I just went woof woof woof, and we went for it. And it's all because of guys like Max Latimer, Brendan Hodge, and Nicholas Pratt. These are the guys. These are the guys. It's a team effort.
I like Max Latimer. Max Latimer kind of knew where it was going because early on you could see the smile cracking. Like he's like, oh,
You know what?
actually.
Hold on, Tim brings up a great point. I got to give respect to the guy in the background who knows how hilarious this is and is just letting this breathe. Let's let it go again.
So we can play it again.
And keep an eye on
Watch
the background guys,
Yeah.
just letting it happen.
I had incredible support from the three guys behind me, and this is a team effort. And without such great guys behind me, this kind of a result wouldn't be possible, especially with all the help we get from our coaching staff at Rowing Canada. And most importantly, the city of St. Catharines. The city of St. Catharines was huge. I could hear them when I was coming through that bottom 500 meters, and I was so hungry. I just went woof woof woof, and we went for it. And it's all because of guys like Max Latimer, Brendan Hodge, and Nicholas Pratt. These are the guys.
Max
These are the
cracked a
guys.
smile. Look at that.
Woo!
Sorry, what is that? A little Ric Flair at the end.
Little Ric Flair.
So that was pretty cool, obviously, to get put on one of Canada's top sports talk shows the morning after our gold medal at the Pan Am Games. But the hilarious thing for me was that caused a massive division between our crew that we had to patch up that summer, because I appreciated Eric for everything he brought to the boat. We were roommates, we were teammates, but he was an incredible personality. And
who among us is perfect, but I know you've gone through some times.
Sorry. And Brendan and Nick, they really felt like that projection and on the podium doesn't reflect their feelings about sport. And so we had to find ways to patch up our relationships and work together. And ultimately that created a bunch of confidence in us being able to right the ship, come together, qualify for the Olympics later that summer, and then eventually get to compete in Rio together. And the Rio Olympics was unlike anything. And this is something I wished Madison could have experienced. I know Kate will hopefully get to tell you some stories from Rio, but it's being at an Olympic Games in a non-COVID times is just the most incredible thing to be a part of. It's just an incredible community. Sport brings people together in such a positive atmosphere, and being there firsthand, to be so proud of to be Canadian, to meet other Canadian athletes, to listen to their stories. It really reflected upon me that our Canadian Olympians are just regular people just like us, and just like you who are watching today. And when you learn more about the Olympians, and they have this title that makes them sound so grand, but realistically, they just found something they loved. They pursued it wholeheartedly. And in that pursuit of something beyond themselves, they were able to achieve this incredible feat of qualifying and getting to compete in Olympic Games. And that reflection really helped spur my motivations to pursue another quadrennial in the sport of rowing. The three of my teammates that I competed with in Rio actually retired after the Rio Olympics. And because my event actually was removed from the Olympics. And so I had to find a whole new group of teammates. I had to learn a whole different discipline in rowing. Madison and I were both sweep rowers with one oar. And then in the Tokyo Olympics, I had to learn how to scull. And so I had all these hurdles that were put in front of me. And one of the things that I shifted my focus for the Tokyo Quadrennial, which ended up becoming incredibly important for the COVID delay and how I had to qualify, was that my goal wasn't necessarily to go to the Olympic Games to try and win. My goal was to become the best version of Maxwell Latimer that I could ever achieve. And that meant pursuing the best in the boat as possible, as fast as I could on the rowing machine, as fit as possible. But it also meant being as good a leader as I could within the team, to try and make the team culture within the environment as positive as possible, to develop myself outside of sport in ways that I found challenging. And I really believe that pursuit helped me and my partner, Patrick, develop a really strong relationship that helped us overcome the delayed Olympics and our final Olympic qualifier that we had to pursue during COVID lockdown and travel. we had to fly to Switzerland, and we were unvaccinated, but we had to go to this crazy event where it was 14 boats competing for 2 final spots at the Tokyo Games. And we came through some massive adversity to win that event and qualify for the Tokyo Games, qualify for my second Olympics. And I truly believe it's because we removed the metrics of other people and we put the metrics of ourselves. And that was more important. It was more about, can we control the things that make us better and invest in those things, because those things will never leave us. No matter what we do at this event, at the Olympics, or beyond sport, the pursuit of something bigger than yourself that you might not think you can achieve, going through that pursuit and finding things out about yourself can be a really powerful experience. So I would encourage everyone listening today, if you have a passion, to pursue it, to be curious about it, and to find different ways to explore who you are as a person, because honestly, the more you know about yourself, the more you'll have a better chance of living life to the fullest. And that's what I really truly believe that sport has taught me.
Very inspiring words. Maxwell, thank you so much. But I am a bit puzzled about something, because I understand that your favorite motto is perhaps not as uplifting at the first glance than those words that you just shared. So maybe you could explain why I'm told your favorite motto is keep the fridge empty.
Well, keep the fridge empty, actually, there's multiple things that keep the fridge empty means. And the one that one thing that I'm a lightweight rower. And so that means that as a lightweight rower, you have to manage your body weight on top of all these extra things. And so during the year, I would have to lose sometimes between 10 to 15 pounds from December to May when I would be racing internationally. And so keep the fridge empty literally meant keep the fridge empty, because the less snacks you had in the fridge, the less chance you had of gaining weight. And so the better chance you had of sticking to your diet. But the actual like deeper meaning to keep the fridge empty was these ideas. If you go out on like a long endurance adventure and you have a fully stocked fridge at home, the temptation to turn around, to retreat, and to go back to safety, to that full fridge is too tempting. And if you leave the fridge empty, then the only way you have to go is forward. And so it helped me pursue training in a way that you could overcome obstacles when you had bad days. It was about keeping the fear behind you to motivate you to push you forward.
Wow, there is a lot more to that than I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Kate, now it's over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm super, super grateful to be here with you all, even though it's from afar over Zoom. I will start off by saying that I am a very different type of athlete from Madison and Maxwell. I am a sprinter, and so anything over about 45 seconds is too far for me. I also started out in sliding sports in bobsleigh, and so we really didn't need to have an empty fridge. It was like the only reason it was empty is because we were putting it in our mouths to gain weight with gravity sports. So, but I actually tend to be quite a rambler, so I'll try and like limit my rambling, and we're actually just gonna maybe start off with a video that CBC put out that tells my story in more of a compressed way, and then I'll elaborate on it afterwards. So Kelsey, if you don't mind playing that would be great.
While you were sleeping, Kate O'Brien had a full circle medal moment. The Canadian flag bearer fought to a podium finish, and Canada's sitting volleyball team got started. Kate O'Brien had her eyes on a medal in the C45 500-meter time trial on Thursday, which is incredible considering where she was just 4 years ago. She actually competed at the Rio 2016 Olympics, but in 2017 had a crash in the velodrome that almost killed her. She had a long list of injuries, but the most serious was to her brain. When she woke up from a coma, doctors told her she may never walk or talk like she used to, let alone ride a bike.
Canada could have a rider in the gold medal position. They will have a rider in the gold medal position here. Kate O'Brien
But O'Brien put in the work and not only made it back to the track, but onto the Paralympic team and all the way to a medal position in Tokyo. She rode the 500 meters in a blistering factored time of 35.439 seconds. So it was either silver or gold for O'Brien with just one rider left to go, who happened to be the reigning Paralympic champion, Kadina Cox from Great Britain.
The gold medal will go to Kadina Cox. Well done, the gold medal.
Cox set a new world record of 34.433 seconds. So it was silver for the Canadian at her first Paralympic Games.
Thanks. That video makes me sound a lot more impressive than I am. That said, Kadina Cox from GB is my nemesis now. So yeah, we went against each other at World Champs, and I took her world record and gold, and then she came back for the Paralympics and took them both back. So there we go. So yeah, basically to, you know, start from earlier than that, I am a Calgarian. Please don't hold that against me. I live in Vancouver with my wife now. And yeah, I started out, as I said, I grew up in Calgary, went to high school in Calgary. I started in sport, I remember when I was 7, and we went to like the community sport registration. And I decided, my dad is British, and I decided I'm going to play soccer. Like, that's what I'm going to do. And my mom and I were waiting there, and there was this huge, huge lineup for the soccer table to sign up. And I didn't really want to wait. And she said, well, I played basketball in high school. Like, if you ever thought of that, you could play that this year. And I said, okay, fine. And it was, yeah, one of the best decisions that I could have been led toward, because I played basketball for about 7 years. It's still a large part of my heart lies in that game. I ended up I stopped playing when I was in grade 10, because I decided like that high school was serious matter, and I had to get my grades up and have my plan. I had a very strict plan that I had put in place myself, that I was going to go to high school for 4 years and do 4 years of undergrad and go to med school and move on with life. And so I stopped playing basketball in grade 10, but ended up getting into track and field in high school. And yeah, I quite liked that, and I sort of stayed with it. I was recruited to a team off, like outside of high school. And then, as you'll find out through my story, I am an injury prone human. And so in grade 11, I decided that I was a sprinter in track and field, and I decided I was gonna try hurdles. And I would add that into my sprint regime for grade 11 and 12. And our school had 2 hurdles, and we were training on them, and I tripped on my single hurdle that I had and basically destroyed my knee. So yeah, I didn't do sports for years and years after that. And actually I took my undergrad at the University of Calgary, and I got a BSc, and then I did my master's at the University of Calgary in, ironically, the medical school where I was a patient when I had my crash in cycling. So I was sort of going through university, and I was a bit unsure in my undergrad what I wanted to kind of do. I wasn't happy just being a student. I missed sports. It was a huge, huge part of, you know, who I saw myself as and what I enjoyed. And so I decided, and I honestly can't even remember how this came about, but I went to a talent ID camp for skeleton for Canada. And that's the strange sliding sport where you're on your belly head first going down the hill at 120 kilometers an hour. And it's the safest of all of the sliding sports, go figure. And so I started in skeleton and I thought, well, okay, like I have to like this sport. Like I'm a total speed demon and, you know, it's fun and you get to lay on your belly the whole time. You don't have to do anything. And I did it and I just hated it. I hated it. And I had so many bruises and so many scrapes from hitting every single wall on the way down that track in Calgary. But I, you know, decided that like, this is now part of my plan. I have to like this. It goes into my long-term plan. And, you know, then I'll still continue university and I'll still go into medical school. And now I'll have this extra little achievement. And the Olympics were definitely, they were nowhere in my mind at all. I was just had decided that this is what I wanted to do. And even though I hated it and would get so grumpy before I had to drive to Winsport in Calgary and like throw my bag on the ground when it was too heavy. And you know, you can learn a lot about me tonight with the stories that I'll tell. But one day after skeleton training, which was quite late at night, it was the provincial team. And so we had the track from about 9 to 11 at night. And then bobsleigh, the provincial team, came in after us and had the track from about midnight to 1 in the morning. And so after skeleton practice, one of the bobsledders, the provincial ones who had just started, who I met at the Talent ID camp, a pilot of a bobsleigh came in, and so they're the ones that kind of drive it down the track, and the brakemen, which is what I was, basically we're kind of the engine for the sled and sit there and pull the brakes at the bottom, and that's our whole job. And so she said, could you just like stay after training today for skeleton and like just be my brakeman? I have no one to sit in the back of the sled. And like, I said, I didn't know anything about bobsleigh or what to do. And she's like, it doesn't matter. Like you could just like gently push the sled and then like, I'll yell at you when you have to pull the brakes at the bottom. And so I said, okay, fine. So we're going down the track and in the curves and get to the end of corner 8 and end up on our side. And we slide down the rest of the track on my first bobsleigh run down the track sideways, which is, not how you're supposed to be. And when we got to the bottom, I thought, yes, this is my sport. And yeah, I was in love from then on, and started training with, I was recruited to the World Cup team in my first year, but I declined because I wanted to finish my undergrad. And then I ended up kind of in a very positive way, to me, working my way up through the ranks again for bobsleigh. So rather than just going straight to World Cup, I did kind of the provincial field for a year, and then Europa Cup, and then up to World Cup for the last years of my career in bobsleigh. And I did that for about 6 years, and it wasn't until a week before our testing camp in September of 2013 that I thought, wow, the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, Sochi 2014 is like a high probability for me. And it was, looking back, is a huge, huge lesson that I've taken from it, is that I was not competing in bobsleigh for the same reason that I competed in skeleton, or so that I could have OLY behind my name. It was because I love bobsleigh. And it just so happened that the Winter Olympics kind of came up as an option. And so, to add drama to the story, it was just after that week, just before our testing camp, that I was warming up. And after the various surgeries I had to correct my knee injury, to fix my knee injury from grade 11, I tore my hamstring quite badly during a warm up for sprints. And so I couldn't do the testing, and I was significantly devastated by it. I didn't realize how much once the Winter Olympics came into my head, I couldn't get rid of them, and I felt like a huge failure. And so I basically was sort of like, where do I go from here? And it was around that time that Cycling Canada came to Winsport and was doing testing, and they said, could you just come out and like test? We just need bodies. Like it doesn't matter if you know what track cycling is, we just need people to kind of fill the ranks. And so I went, and I really didn't have any idea what track cycling was. I had seen, the famous British man, Chris Hoy, win gold multiple times in the Olympics. And otherwise it just was riding a bike in a circle. I didn't understand. And so I did it. And I guess that bobsledders put out reasonably good power over 6 seconds. So Cycling Canada really wanted me for the 2014 through to the Rio season. And I had decided I was going back to bobsleigh and kind of going to explore that. And the seasons, strangely enough, even though track cycling is a summer sport, they overlap. So, but Cycling Canada and Bobsleigh Canada spoke, and they said, fine, Kate will primarily be a bobsleigh athlete, but she'll tow her little bikes back and forth from World Cups to bobsleigh World Cups. And then she can, choose her own at the end of the 2015 season. So that's what I did. And it was amazing, and really actually, strangely enough, brought me and my bobsleigh teammates together, because we were both learning this weird new sport called track cycling. And in hotel rooms, we would all be falling off of trainers trying to balance, and we couldn't do it. And, so at the end of that, I ended up finishing with, 2 World Cups or World Championships back to back. And then decided that I was switching to track cycling, and I did that leading into the 2015 Pan Am Games. And it's funny, when you train for one sport at a time, you seem to be a bit better at that single sport. So we ended up getting gold and setting a Pan Am record for those games. And then it was down to qualifying for Rio, which was a pretty big, lesson in and of itself, in that we had 2 years to qualify, but really only had 1, because my first year was mostly bobsleigh. But we ended up qualifying and ended up going to Rio, and it was an amazing experience. That said, I recall for Rio, funny stories. I was sitting in the start gate, and we were going to do team sprint, which is, I was the starter. So I did the first lap, and my teammate followed behind me, and then I pulled off, and she did the second lap, and was sitting in the gate, and it was counting down from 10, and you're like in the zone, ready to sprint at any moment. And then I fell over sideways. The gate malfunctioned, and I was strapped into my pedals and had no movement. And so on international Olympics on TV, there was Kate O'Brien laying on the track.
Oh boy. Kate, I just want to suggest that we maybe we can open this up, because there's so much fascinating material here. And this is before you had that disastrous training accident. And I'm wondering if we could perhaps get to that, but as well broaden it to both Madison and Maxwell, because you've all enjoyed success, but you all know something about adversity. You in your own ways. And I'm wondering, how is it possible to turn adversity into something positive? And I think that all of us watching could truly benefit from your insight into this, because you've lived it, all of you.
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
I think that adversity brought my team together, and I think we had to break apart to then build our culture and build our communication styles and build our trust. And I think trust is a huge part of like my story, and being able to race in my event, because you know, if something does go wrong, you lose because of that person, because it is a sport of milliseconds. So we dealt with lots of problems, and I think in the face of adversity, you have to know what your role is on a team as well. And for me, it was being positive. I was that person who was going to show up the day after that tragic bike accident and say, we're here, we can't change what happened, and how are we going to move forward and make that into something that's going to make us stronger. So some of my teammates probably would laugh at me saying that I was too positive and that they couldn't sometimes handle it, but I knew my role, and I think that helped me in the face of change, in the face of issues.
So there's that kind of physical adversity, the disastrous adversity, and Kate will talk about that with you in a moment. But Max, there's also the adversity of actually losing or not coming in. I shouldn't say losing because you won, but when it came to, you know, the Olympics, your team finished 10th overall. That's tough to swallow. That's a form of adversity, I would say. How do you turn that into something positive?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some experience with that kind of, or experience with losing in throughout my rowing career. And I've tried to look at it as like, you learn more from the races that you lose than the races that you win, because when you win, you've gone and done your job. You train super hard so that when you go to the race, the goal is to perform exactly the same way you did the day before, the month before, and to do your job and to go down the race course as fast as possible. And when you do that the right way, the result is what it is. Like it's an Olympic gold medal when the women's 8 performed on that day at the Olympics. But sometimes your result can be your best, but it's not good enough to be the best. And I think when that happens, you go back to the drawing board and you talk to your coaches, you talk to your teammates, and you look for things that were exposed by other countries or other people within the environment for ways to improve. And as athletes, I'm sure, I can't wait to hear more about Kate's story, by the way. So as athletes, like you seek out that feedback, you seek out adversity, because without adversity, without feedback, without competition, you're not going to become the best version of yourself. And I think that's incredibly powerful. For going back to the Tokyo Olympics, in the 2019 qualification year, we finished 1.13 seconds out of qualification for the Olympics, which meant that we had no certainty of going to the Olympic Games. And then the delayed Olympics meant that we had to endure a whole extra 12 months of that still uncertainty whether we were going to have an event that was even going to be hosted to let us go to the games. And amidst all of that, the whole goal was, we can't control anybody else around the world. All we can control is ourselves. And we were just going to try and look inward to become the best version of Max and Patrick that could be possible. And I believe we did that at the qualifier. At the Olympics, we had some adversity in terms of conditions. I mean, one of the boats flipped like in our semifinal, which never happens in Olympic Games. There's actually the reigning silver medalist from the Rio Olympics who have not medaled at a single race this whole quadrennial. They flipped over. And so when that happens in a race, you know that you're dealing with some serious adverse conditions, and you do what you can. And when you have that one bad stroke, you recognize that it happened in your brain, and then you immediately let it out of your brain to focus on take the next stroke as best as you can. Keep pushing, because the moment you dwell on that mistake is the moment you stop moving forward.
Thanks, Max. Kate, you've had some time to think about this question, and not just now when I post it, but many, many long hours in recuperation. There was the torn hamstring that tore your bobsled dreams away, and you've already talked about how difficult that was. And then there was the physically devastating accident that I don't think we can even begin to imagine what that was like, and then to come back. So how does one turn that kind of adversity into something that's positive, as you've done?
Well, first of all, thank you for stopping my rambling before it continued on. But yeah, it definitely was shown in video. I had a crash in training, and it, I ended up with a few broken bones, but mainly a pretty bad head injury that kept me in the ICU and the hospital for about 3 months, and then rehabilitation, which is still going on. And I think when you're told that things just aren't for me, when things are not going to go to the plan that I have come up with and will make me feel, quote, successful or, even normal. I think this has taught me a lot that one of the biggest ways, in a strange way, to overcome these things is to change what you can and do what you can. And that's how I'm sure I'll get into it later, but how I ended up at the Paralympics, going down a path that I really wasn't. I never saw that coming, and realizing that is okay, that change happens, and that because you have a plan in your head of how something should be, and you're driven toward it, and can think your way through it. Sometimes negative things happen, and it's okay to feel that they're negative, and it's about seeking out what you choose to kind of make you happy and get your head back into the space that you would like it. And sometimes that takes, I'm still working on it. And it's been, 5 years. But
what was it like when the doctors told you that you're never going to do sports again? Was that something that you just got mad? You just said, no, you can't tell me how I'm going to do my life.
Yes. I actually had to be, I have an amazing doctor who I work with in Calgary, and had to be traded from my initial doctor because I was such a problem child with not listening to them saying your speech won't go back to normal, and you definitely won't do sports again, and you're never getting on a bike again, like for more than just safety, obviously. And I sort of thought it was less about going back to competition and more that I thought, well, why can't I get on a bike? I like riding bikes. I like to go and get, Sour Patch Kids and candy from the store. So I need to at least be able to do that. And it kind of led into like being the problem child, as it's put, but patient, sort of ended up having all of the therapists who I was working with say, okay, you've done all of these things that we said you couldn't do, so fine, let's put you on a bike and we'll try and make sure you can ride it in a straight line before we let you go.
And in the process, you have inspired so many people, perhaps in ways that you might not have had you not faced that adversity in the way that you did. Do you know, I was mentioning to Maxwell earlier about his favorite motto. I understand yours is, Robert Frost, I can sum up what I've learned about life in 3 words. It goes on. And I think we can now understand why that is your favorite motto. Let's talk a little bit about the games now. They start on Friday. The athletes are there, I think, by and large. They're all different individuals, of course, but what do you suppose that they are all experiencing now in common, having been there yourselves?
I don't know how active everyone is on social media, but I've personally really enjoyed all the athletes that I follow who have arrived in Beijing. And the one thing that you have to realize is that you open your door into your room at the village, and then there's this massive suitcase that's sitting on your named bed. And inside that suitcase is your kit. And as athletes, like, you work super, super, super hard for this little logo and like this jacket. And of course, like the teams now with with Lulu. I loved it when they were with HBC, but obviously Lulu is an incredible company. And so that's one thing that generates that excitement around being in Team Canada. You can see all the athletes that have been posting about, yes, it's still COVID and they're wearing masks and they're very isolated at the village. There's not that same atmosphere that we had at Rio, for example. But like the excitement around being so proud to be from Canada, to wear this logo on your chest, that is shared for sure. And I'm sure the feeling of how big the Olympic Games is smacking people right in the face.
Yeah, I think that's funny you say that it was smacking them in the face, because that's how I honestly felt when we were rowing in Tokyo, because I kept trying to calm myself down and, you know, say, you're just at another rowing practice, Madison. Don't be nervous. You're with your girls. You're good. And then everywhere I looked, there was these big Olympic rings everywhere. And it was immediately, yeah, providing gravity to the situation. This is what I had dreamed about, and that I had one shot to do it. And it is nerve-wracking. So you have to have good tactics to kind of deal with that, which I'm sure all these athletes have done countless visualizations and putting themselves, but you can never really prepare for that feeling when you're sitting in that start gate. And you're kind of shaking probably from the caffeine and from your nerves and those few strokes. And then you're like, oh, I'm doing what I love. So I'm sure they're proud to be Canadian, excited to be there, especially with all the uncertainty. It makes you even just happy to be able to perform and do what you love. And then I'm sure they're nervous.
Kate, can you relate to that?
I can definitely, you know, in the start gate, when I went over, I had that feeling, but strangely enough, I was a bit peculiar, because when we specifically doing this huge thing, getting to Rio specifically, you know, my first games, and well, okay, we'll get to the village and it's going to be this huge thing, and we got there and I was like, yeah, this is the same as every other event I've been to, except there's these big giant rings. Like, but that was such a good feeling, is just realizing I was still doing exactly the same sport that I loved. And, you know, in the end, we had trained we'd done as much as we could. And however the medals turned out, the experience is what I was actually going to take away from that. And it was a very good feeling.
Okay, we've been encouraging folks to put their questions down into the Q&A section. So let's turn to some of those questions right now. Certainly you've given us lots to think about, lots to wonder about. And we have a question about what would you tell kids who are passionate about a sport and have big dreams, but continue to get cut from tryout teams or are considered bubble athletes?
I feel like for me, a huge part of it was, my number one thing would be try not, like, do the sport or music or sport or whatever, you know, science, whatever it is you choose, because you love it. And rather than seeking out a label from it or making a team. And I was cut from a lot of teams when I played basketball, and it's a terrible, terrible feeling. But I think I continued when I had the most, you know, success in sport was when I was doing it because I just loved the sport.
I think that's very interesting, because those team sports that, like, oftentimes in rowing, selection is one of the most difficult things that you deal with. I mean, you can imagine Madison will probably talk about it a little more, because they were selecting for almost 6 months straight. Like every week, it was somebody else in the boat, somebody else that was going to the Olympics, and then that total uncertainty. And that's like that dream of the Olympics being held on, like someone who's decided to choose that path for life, and rather than going to getting married or having kids, they've chosen to go down the Olympic pathway. And what I loved about rowing, because I, like Kate, was doing team sports as well, and I was playing soccer at a pretty high level, but I found it very difficult to crack into the top echelons of soccer. But why I loved rowing, and this is something that I really encourage kids to find, is rowing gave me something that was mine. Like I could control my training. And then a lot of my training was not with the team because I found fitness and I found being active, and that was the passion. And so you might not find that team sport that is, or you might be a bit of a bubble athlete, but it doesn't mean there's so many sports that have no barriers, like going for a bike ride, like finding a good relationship with being active is so important to being healthy in life. And I think that's what rowing really gave me, is that I had an incredible relationship with being active to the point now where on days when I don't get to have my activity, like people will know that like, oh, Max must not have gone for a run this morning because she's not as happy today, because I've loved controlling that for myself, and you don't necessarily need a team or need to be on a team in order to let yourself do that.
Awesome.
I was the queen of the bubble athlete. I was since being on the national team or the U23 team, I was consistently the last person in the boat. I never had the fastest erg score, and so I'm sure every sport has their own kind of machine that gives them a number that judges them. And I was the last one, had the lowest erg score in my U23 boat. But every time I got on the water and got the opportunity to actually seat race, I felt like I had what it took to move the boat in the right way, to complement my teammates and to bring out the best in them. But I felt like I kept getting one shot and then losing. And so I fortunately didn't get cut from the teams. I made the women's 4, both in 2019, and then in the part 1 of my selection for the Olympics, I made the women's 4. So I went into COVID actually training for the women's 4, thinking that that was the boat I could potentially end up in until 2021. And so I guess my advice to you, if you feel like you're getting cut or you're on the bubble, is that firstly, that's okay. We've all been cut before. Maybe not Max in rowing. Max is a very good rower, but I've been cut before. And the best athletes learn the most from these moments of your heart sinking, your heart breaking because you haven't made something that you love. And then I guess my second point is that you need to start celebrating the small wins, because if you keep having losses, then you're not going to be happy in the sport. So celebrate the small wins, celebrate you winning a piece in practice, celebrate your teammates laughing with you, or you potentially making your teammates happy at practice. And then I think the other part is being vulnerable with your teammates, and look at those girls at the top and say, why can't that be you? And then try to push them, and hopefully they'll try to pull you up, because if they can help pull you up, that'll make a better team in total. So be vulnerable with them, ask them questions. They'll feel really confident and good about that. And I think you'll learn a lot from them, and hopefully they'll learn a lot from you too.
Well, some great insight. Kate, I'm thinking about the feeling that you had with bobsleigh was just, I loved it. I just loved it. And I wonder if some of those so-called bubble athletes are denied that passion for their sport because maybe they're not the best. And is there a conflict sometimes between this, we want to foster this love of sport with this desire, this necessity to be the best?
I would say yes, definitely. And that's something I still struggle with. I was also a bubble athlete. And I think it's tricky. It's extremely tricky, because once you get to this, high level of success and you become an Olympian or a world champion or, whatever it is that you're seeking, there is a huge amount of pressure put on you from the public eye. And you are put into this position where you almost have to choose between like it's difficult to decide, do I still love this sport or am I doing this to maintain success and to please the public? And I'll make sure that my social media is all positive and happy and I can't have any negative or difficult experiences. And in a way, I am grateful for my, I mean, I shouldn't say grateful, but that's a lot of what I've taken from my crash in 2017 was, okay, do I choose to go back into this sport because I want to go back into this sport? Because no one really, I had fallen, I was definitely far from even being near the bubble or anything, and no one really cared, to put it bluntly, if I went back. And I just chose to go back or to try to go back. And it just so happened that it ended successfully, but it was only because I, much like bobsleigh, because I love winning.
Well, I hope there's some youngsters and some parents who are watching tonight who will take some of what you've just shared. So another question now. How is the dynamic at the Olympics between other Olympians and other countries? Is it all positive, or is there an edge with the competitive energy that surrounds the Olympic Games?
Mastin, where do you go with this one?
Well, I didn't go to a normal Olympics, so I feel like maybe you two should answer.
Well, you just think about the American women's 8 versus the Canadian women's 8. Like that's like a storied rivalry, like over decades, and those are crews that you don't see talking on land.
Yeah, I think in general, walking around like the dining hall, you're just kind of like, whoa, look at all these people. They don't really look what I thought they would look like, because there's a lot of staff there. There's a lot of, so not everyone's athletes. And even if they are athletes, they could be from completely different sports. So they have different body shapes and sizes. And it's so fun, like looking around, trying to figure out what sports people came from. And everyone's obviously very kind. But at the race course, it is different. And we actually met with a Canadian defense specialist on interrogations, because we wanted to learn from him about mental performance and how do you walk into a space and own it, and how do we stay ourselves, because we're a very happy, fun, smiley, laughy crew, so we don't want to come in with a ego that wasn't our own. And he said that Canadians are often underestimated because we are smiley and because we are kind and say sorry, but we are fearless. And I loved that. And so that's how we tried to kind of present ourselves at the race course. So, because what's scarier than a person who's smiling? And yeah, what Max is talking about is the American women's 8. So I try to stay out of the drama because I don't really want to look across the start line and be like, oh, wow, you have 3 Olympic medals to your name and I have 0. But at the same time, I did know that going into it, and I could feel the tension between our 2 crews specifically. And it was funny watching this other crew on land, because you're watching their every move and you can kind of see them unraveling as they're seeing that there's other crews that are pretty fast around them. So I wouldn't say that that was the most positive relationship, but being able to stand up on the podium with the Kiwis, who I had been racing in my head for 2 years, and 2 of those girls had won 2 gold medals in the pair the day before, that was pretty cool. So that's definitely a highlight of the Olympics, is getting to see other countries and people doing the same sport as you in different countries.
We certainly didn't hear that commentary when Steve Armitage was calling your race, that, okay, Madison mainly looking over at the Americans. She's going, oh, she doesn't want to look because she wasn't got caught up in the drama. Okay. Max, Kate, some thoughts on that? What is the relationship like with your competitors? What's it like?
Kate, do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
It's funny because I've raced some of my competitors for maybe 2013, my first, like 7 or 8 years. I've raced the same guys, and so in different events, and so it's like but the event that I was racing in Tokyo was the double. So it's just a 2-man event. And the hilarious part about lightweight rowing is we all have to weigh in. And if you want to look at the weirdest thing about a rowing regatta, and any rower will tell you this, the weirdest place to be at a rowing regatta is the lightweight weigh-in room 2 hours before a lightweight race. You have these super emaciated people just shuffling into this room where they get lined up and they go onto the scale, and then they come out and they drink this water and they eat this little bit of food, and then they're all kind of like, there's a common language no matter what country you're from around being like how hungry you are or what you've been doing to get to weight. But because of that, and because of that experience over how long I was on the circuit for, I really got to know a lot of the athletes that we were competing against. So I would say our event is even though it's generally considered one of the most competitive events at the Olympics, I think because that weight restriction means that all the athletes are really just incredibly close in terms of their body size.
So I can just hear it now. Then you're in the chow line or whatever. You're going, "Hey man, keep your fridge empty."
Yeah, exactly. Or better yet, when racing ends and you're all out at a bar and everyone's drinking a bunch of beers and you're like, "Oh, I don't need to weigh in for 2 months." So it's a common line of joking you guys that keeps things a little more lighter. Some people definitely you never get anything back when you interact, but there are some that are quite chummy, and I think it's kind of cool because there's a level of professionalism in the event where it's there's so much respect from competitor to competitor when you're sitting in a room like that you would know that to be kind of edgy would just be a fake facade, because each person can see the commonality in each other, and it's kind of going to be who can raise to the best of the occasion on the race course and gets to come away with the hardware. And then the respect is the handshake afterwards, no matter win or loss. And that part is very cool. It's very cool to be on a mutual playing ground with Olympic gold medalists and have the respect be very mutual.
Kate, what's your experience being in that department?
I would tend to agree with actually both of the last things said, but I think, I have a tendency to, different people have different things, I would say, is what I learned most about competitors. Some people are very quiet and try to do the semi-intimidation tactic. And I'm one of those obnoxious people who just talks, or doesn't for a match sprint, an event that we do, it's 2 people on the track and kind of a chess match a bit. And they always look to the side of the track, at you in the eye with your visor. And I just don't look at them. And maybe that makes me a dirtbag, but that's kind of, I would say that oftentimes it's when I was the most human, I guess, that I had the best interactions with my competitors, even if it was on the day of. And until we got onto the track and were racing against each other, we were just 2 humans talking to each other.
Another question now. And actually, I think that was brilliant, Kate, because it's more like the double psych. You want me to look at you? I'm not going to look at you. And that just freaks them out more. So that was really good. You probably went to those interrogation courses that Madison was talking about. Got the inside track on that. So athletes are notorious for being superstitious. Do you have any superstitions or any tokens that you carry with you in competition?
Okay, I'll go first. O'Brien is a very Irish name, so there's a lot of superstitions associated with this background, but I try to kind of limit mine because they can kind of get in the way if you let them. But so just before the 2016 games, for Easter, my mom gave me a little stuffed rabbit that I named Violet, and she has been, I think she's better known than I am now, and has been to every games and every practice and sits in the passenger seat of the car on the way to practice. And so that's a large, she has to get a tummy rub before I go up to the gate. So.
Wow, that makes the bumblebee necklace seem like small change.
That's so cute. I do also love the bumblebee necklace. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Just I mentioned that. All right, Madison, what about you? True confessions time.
So I really try to stay away from these because I, like Kate, will try to avoid the, lines in the pavement because I'm so nervous that I'm going to create some bad omens. So I try to have as few as possible. And I would say the one that stands out for me was before the first time I represented Canada, my dad bought me a maple leaf necklace. And so I wore it at all of my international races, except for my Olympic heat. I forgot it. And of course, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to lose. I'm going to catch a crab. I'm going to like ruin everything for my boat. And then I thought, it's got nothing but just love and support in it. And I'll wear it for the next 2 races. So I'd say that's mine, but I try to stay away from superstitious items.
Do you guys remember the story of Dumbo? Remember the Dumbo the elephant and Dumbo's feather? Dumbo was, anyways, how he could fly was because he had the feather and he lost the feather and he thought he wouldn't be able to fly, but he could fly anyways. I guess that's your feather, and you can still fly. So there
You
you
can fly
go.
without it.
Yeah. Max, what about you?
I had some for sure that were like a little more. I used to wear these bracelets, these like, I still wear one, but Madison actually like cracked it off like a couple of years ago, and when we were hanging out and rowing. But I do have a necklace that I wear, and it's funny because when you row, you have the uni suit, which means that like if you're wearing a necklace like this with a bit of a medallion on it, it like pops up and stuff. So I wear it to like for warm up and stuff, and then when it's time to go on the boat, I like take it off and I put it in my sock. And so I like carry it with me, but I think it's funny that it's like I have to wear it like tucked in the sock, and it was just a reminder. It's funny because it's the Celtic cross, so O'Brien, the Irish, we tend to have our superstitions, and this is like that from my family and from my high school. So.
Hey, well, while we're talking about sort of talismans, I'm thinking that you may have brought your medals, whether they were Pan Am, Paralympics, Olympics. Am I right in guessing that? And if so, could you just show us some hardware? Whoa! Wow, that's big. We're sort of losing it with the chroma key there.
There we go.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? They are magnificent. They are beautiful pieces of art, aren't they?
Yeah, I was just looking today at the Beijing medals. Pretty exciting with all the news around the Olympics. I looked down and I was like, whoa, I have one of those.
Well, what a coincidence.
Yeah.
So I think we're coming to sort of the end of our time, and we've got a question now that is looking forward, and it's 2-part. Are any of you hoping to compete again on the Olympic stage? Part number 1.
I'm not sure. All my friends have gone back to rowing now, and we're a centralized training program. Everyone trains in Victoria. So most people have decided to go back now and start training. And they've kind of given us, about a year to decide, and hopefully you come back before then, but they want to give everyone that space to train by themselves and train decentralized. So haven't decided, but I have started a new career in my family business in financial management. And I am really enjoying it. I'm finding that competitive aspect can be transferred into the working world. And I love working with my father. He has great philosophies and investments. And I think that that's a fun thing to work with your parents. So I have transitioned, but I'm still training a lot with Max. We love to train around Vancouver, and really enjoying that. And then I hope to join a choir. So I'm trying to do some things outside of sport because life isn't just one thing for me.
Well, you've got a lot of irons in the fire, that's for sure, and a lot of options. It's wonderful to keep those options open. Kate or Max? Or you don't have to comment if you don't want to. It's allowed to say no comment.
Go ahead, Kate.
I think As of right now, I am aiming for the 2024 Paralympics, and actually looking into adding in a second sport for those games. And then ideally, and this is very much a dream, but we'll see, because I just love the sport, but it would be great to compete in the Paris Olympics beforehand. And there's a probability that might happen for team sprint. So we'll see, but it's very much a thing.
Getting the inside scoop.
We'll
For
never
those that
tell.
know too, our Canadian track cyclists, especially the females, are pretty tip top. You're in,
Yeah, they're fast.
we're in great hands in the velodrome and at the moment.
All right. Well, Max, now the pressure's on you.
Yeah, I mean, my comment's very much the same as Mass's, which why it sucks. I went after Kate. Kate should have gone last. Just because, I mean, I'm very cognizant that I have many goals in life, and being a part of sport for as long as I have has been just an incredible privilege. And I'm certainly trying to pursue what the next chapter looks like while also keeping all my options open. So that means staying as fit as possible, but also pursuing career options. And that's the kind of, luckily the Rowing Canada is supporting their athletes in kind of that self-discovery, knowing that, for example, the lightweight double was supposed to be removed from the Olympics after Tokyo, but then because of COVID, it was extended into the Paris Olympics, and Paris will be the last Olympics for lightweight rowing. And so there was most of the quadrennial I was training knowing this was likely going to be the last Olympics. And then all of a sudden, because of this crazy event that we're all still dealing with now, it was extended. And so this was always my plan post Tokyo, but now that plan's like shifted a little bit, and there's that door that cracked open. So I'm trying to keep my options open and just see what's out there.
I understand too that you're studying now for a pretty intensive 2.5-year program that's going to put you in a position to be a clinical psychologist or a psychotherapist. How does that fit into your journey?
Well, it's really interesting because I started pursuing that in the delay to the Olympics, because it was like, well, we have to remember there's a realistic chance the Olympics wasn't going to happen. And so you invest all this time into a goal of getting to this an event that is incredible and hopefully achieving the result that you want or as best as you can. But then I had no certainty of what was going to happen in 2020, and what was it, April, when I applied and got into the master's program. So I felt like it was incredible to be doing a master's while training full time. It gave me something where we weren't allowed to leave our homes because the team was so strict around our COVID protocols, because our bubble was so big. 30 something athletes or 40 athletes go home to a couple of roommates. Like the bubble was quickly 150 people. And back then we had no idea. No one wanted to get COVID, especially because of the implications for sport. So we generally stayed at home a lot, and having my studies and things to stimulate my mind in a way that was completely different in sport was really beneficial. And I've really enjoyed that so far.
Well, there's no question that whatever the three of you choose to do after your competitive sport life is behind you, that you have established a foundation for any number of things to do incredible, extraordinary things. And thank you very much for doing incredible, extraordinary things tonight by sharing your perspectives and your stories. So Joanne, turn it back to you.
One more time, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for stimulating such a great conversation with the three of us. I mean, I know Kate and Madison quite well, but seems like you did your research too, and it was just really fun I really wished, I mean, if this event had been in person, I think hopefully in the future, there'll be another opportunity for it, and we can come back and get people together and in the same room, and we can have one-on-one conversations with the community in West Van and just say thank you for all the support that we experienced while being at the Olympics.
Bravo. Any closing words? Max, thank you. I should have given the last word to you guys. Madison, anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, thank you so much, Kevin. I mean, I did see one question that we didn't get to, and it was from a Wentworth student. And so I quickly wanted to say that I was in the Mackenzie house. I'm not sure if it's past your bedtime or if you're still listening, but I was in the Mackenzie house, and I loved going back to Morven to see Miss Evans, but I am going to come back to Wentworth, and I would love for you to organize that. So hopefully we can get my email to you, and we can have that event happen at Wentworth.
Great. Kate, looks like the last word to you.
I'll make sure I won't ramble for this one. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to you to Enhance West Van. I'm honored to be part of this and kind of share my story and hopefully hear stories from other people later on down the line.
Great. Well, a shout out for Enhance West Vancouver. And so let's go back to Joanne McKenna, who's on the board of directors of Enhance West Vancouver. Joanne.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. A very big thank you to Madison, Kate, and Maxwell for your authentic sharing of your insights and experiences, as you progressed through your own personal journey to and beyond the Olympics. I hope that the audience, by hearing your incredible stories of these talented and funny athletes, that you get a deeper understanding of the world of sport. You heard about their ability to overcome adversity, be forced to divert from their plans. Kate, I don't know how many derails you had there from your plans, continue to build trust with your teammates, all the while working hard to be successful, both on personal and professional levels. It's outstanding. It's really mind blowing. And the way that you convey your experiences was very real. And I think touched all of us. Kevin, you're amazing. You should do this for a living. So you're fantastic. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. You always make this look so easy, and you always do a great job. I want to also say a big thank you to Enhance West Van's board and staff for all their excellent work in organizing this, particularly Jody and Kelsey. Thank you so much. We couldn't do this without you. I also want to thank again our sponsors, West Vancouver, and North Shore News. You will be getting a short survey following tonight's event, and we would really appreciate it if you could take the time to fill it in. It only takes about 3 minutes, and your feedback is really invaluable for us and really helps us look at and come up with ideas for future forums. We didn't get a chance to show the video tonight that would have let you see all of the fabulous contributions that Enhance West Van makes to our community, but please visit the website and experience that yourself. And finally, I just want to say thank you and good night. And to the audience, thank you for joining us. And to the athletes, thank you so much. You are really inspiring. Have a wonderful evening, folks. Goodbye.